I'm a latecomer to this whole area. I've been persuaded by experience and observation and by my own students when I was working in the university that this is probably the central issue of our day and of our lives. What we do with the world, what we do about sustainability in general. And therefore I'm going to ask Teddy a question and then we'll see where we go from there. What do I say to my first great-grandchild? I now have one and another one coming. What do I say to them about what sort of a world they might inherit? And what do I say to my children and my grandchildren about their part in providing for my great-grandchild?
It's very difficult to know what to say to one's children and grandchildren. I'm not far off having a great-grandchild. I have an 18 or 19-year-old granddaughter now.
Any day now.
Yeah, but it's difficult to know what to say to them. You know, it's also it's difficult to know how to teach them, because what are you going to prepare them for? What sort of world are you preparing them for? Since we're meant to be discussing education in some way. Very difficult. I think the most important thing is that they've got to know that if we continue with present policies, they don't have a future. It's as simple as that. And that it's up to them to devote as much of their energies, you see, to changing these policies.
How do they start?
Well, there's no magical formula, I need to say. You see, people can take part in a whole lot of different ways. One has to change policies by being... I mean, it's back again to the discussion in this meeting here. You know, the document I just read, Shirley's document on education, I just read this evening. Environment is not something you just add on. You see, the policies we're talking about are not environmental policies, economic policies, social policies, all sorts of other policies. It means changing everything. I think we've got it all wrong myself. And there are lots of things to be done. You can be an economist, you can be a teacher, you can be a farmer, you can be, I mean, there are changes are necessary in everything you do, whatever you're involved in. Be an activist and sit in front of the bulldozers. My wife, who used to be one of your pupils, was jailed the other day in solitary confinement. I was very proud of her. Very proud of her. Another editor of The Ecologist had 28 days in jail last month for trying to prevent this totally irresponsible program of road building in England. The government is spending £19 billion on massive roads. I mean, this is completely irresponsible. And it's wonderful to see all these young people opposing these roads and sitting in front of the bulldozers, what they're doing. I'm very proud of them, very proud of my wife for being among them. That's one of the possible reactions. There are lots of others. But there's no doubt about it that current policies are fundamentally wrong. You see, I've always taken a strong line. You talk about my journal, The Ecologist. I started it when I realized that there was only one problem in the world. And I think this is going to shock many people here. That one problem is economic development, which we identify with progress. That is the only problem. You see, here we are fighting environmental destruction, but environmental destruction is the inevitable consequence of economic development. People here may be worried about social disintegration, of which the well-documented symptoms are rising crime, delinquency, drug addiction, all the problems we get in our cities. These, to me, are the inevitable consequences of economic development. So basically, we've got to start off by identifying the enemy. This is wrong. And it's now reached a sort of final phase. It's moved towards the globalization of the economy. That's the final phase. You can't just develop within a country. You need the whole world to develop it. You need massive world markets, massive sources of cheap labor and cheap raw materials going to be available to all the big corporations so that you can maximize development worldwide. And this is going to create so many problems, so many unbelievable problems. You see, the things are going to change very dramatically now. Now it's gone too far. So the fact that economic development or its final phase has now been identified as a problem, you see, which it is, you see, there's never been a greater problem than this. I think there's not going to be a reaction against development as itself. People are going to say, we don't want this anymore. Let's get back to a local economy. Forget about this global economy. Let's get right back and have small shops, you see, small farms, and that's the only way you can solve the problem as far as I'm concerned, because we're meant to be talking about sustainability. See, sustainable development is the buzzword, you know. But I mean, this is again sustainable development. I mean, people realize that development causes a lot of problems, but you weren't allowed to say that. So they all said that development is fine, but what we've done wrong, we've done this wrong sort of development. We need integrated development. And then it was rural development, as Mr. McNamara at the World Bank, and everything go well if we had rural development. Then it became eco-development, that's the United Nations Environment Program. Maurice Strong said ecological development, eco-development. Then we had intermediary development and alternative development. We had every type of development. And now it's sustainable development. But where do you see it? Can you point out any development that's sustainable? Do you see any around? I mean, building 1,240 large dams being built, are these going to be sustainable? There's about 120 big nuclear power stations being built worldwide. Are they sustainable? I mean, what do you see that's sustainable around? Do you see big industrial farms that destroy the soil? Are they sustainable? What do you see that's sustainable? What are we doing today that's more sustainable than the things we did yesterday? You see, it's just not happening. Nothing we're doing is sustainable. And as the economy is becoming increasingly global, it becomes ever less sustainable.
It's the global economy, I think, has arisen to a substantial degree because of the globalization of communications. The moment that happened, then there was no escaping the global economy. So that seems to me to be a given, and I'm still concerned when I say to my kids it would be nice for us to have this idyllic, rural, small-town image of possibilities. I think that the development of local industries based upon local power, instead of transporting electric power hundreds of miles to go as close to the source where you build your productive industries, whatever they may be, or engage in your productive activities. But I don't see that there is any foreseeable stopping of the globalization of the economies.
Well, I quite agree with you that without this global communications, there couldn't be a global economy. But without the global finance, there wouldn't be a global economy either. And that's connected. It's part of it all.
But it is the finance which is really cashed in upon the electronics. I mean, people are sitting in New York and Tokyo and London at this very moment and making decisions which determine what can happen to my country.
Sure. But don't forget...
And my politicians don't have very much say in it. Thank God for that.
But people were trying to globalize the economy long before. Don't forget, what is colonialism all about? I mean, if Britain took over all this enormous section of the world, it wasn't just for fun. You know, we were looking for markets. We were looking for sources of cheap raw materials. So this political imperialism was motivated by exactly the same things that the global economy is. It's corporations requiring a bigger market, cheaper raw materials and cheaper labor. It's the same thing. And it's no coincidence that when political colonialism came to an end in about 1944, we had the beginning of economic imperialism, which, if you want a date for it, it's probably 1944, the Bretton Woods Conference, if you like, it's a symbolic date in any case, because people were talking about doing this before that. If you go back to in the early 40s, they were all talking about the global economy already in America.